Well, hello and good afternoon, AdWeek audience. Welcome to today's webinar. Recently, we've seen a huge shift in the marketplace. YouTube is the #1 platform for reach on CTV, surpassing Netflix, Hulu, and others. As Nielsen recently reported, YouTube has been the top streaming platform by watch time for 1 full year now, with global viewers watching an average of more than 1 billion hours of content on their TVs every day. However, many agencies still overlook YouTube in their CTV strategies, and traditional TV advertisers may not realize the TV quality content that's available. That is why today we're excited to discuss how we can unlock TV quality content on YouTube. I'm Ryan Hoover, Vice President of the Branded Studio here at AdWeek. I want to thank today's sponsor, Pixability, for making this discussion possible. Before we begin, let's do some housekeeping for our presentation today. Today's webinar presentation will run approximately 35 minutes, after which we should have time for some audience Q&A. So if at any point you have a question for one of our speakers, just use the Q&A tool beneath the video window on your screen, and we'll get to as many questions as we can after the presentation. Also, it's not too late to invite your colleagues to join us for today's webinar. About 15 minutes ago, you received a final reminder email from us. In there, you'll find a link for the webinar registration page that you can share. There's still plenty of time for them to join us live. But if they can't, or if you'd like to revisit this discussion at a later date, today's webinar is being recorded. The on-demand recording will be available to all registrants via link, which will be provided later today in your email. Also, if you'd like a PDF of today's slide deck, you'll find it in that email, or you can find it in the event resources area beneath the video window on your screen. As always, if you enjoyed today's webinar, definitely check out the full slate of AdWeek webinars on our calendar at adweek.com/webinars. Now, let me introduce you to today's speakers. Today, we're happy to be joined by Matt Duffy, the CMO at Pixability. With over 20 years of marketing leadership experience in the advertising industry, Matt oversees all marketing strategy and execution at Pixability, the leader in AI-driven contextual targeting, brand suitability, and performance advertising on YouTube. We're also joined by David Matthews, Group Director at Initiative. Matthew heads up video strategy at Initiative, identifying the most effective way for clients to utilize the full premium video landscape. He has over 19 years of video planning and buying experience. And lastly, Erin Mullaney, Media Director at Connelly Partners. Erin has established herself as a strategic force within ad agencies, leveraging a decade of experience in marketing and media. Her passion for unlocking genuine incremental behavior change through impactful advertising is matched by her proven ability to redesign media strategies that deliver bottom-line growth for her clients. Welcome to all of you. Matt, I'll kick it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Very good to be here on this fine day with Erin and Dave. That was a great introduction, Ryan. As Ryan said, for those of you not familiar with us at Pixability, we're a data and technology company focused on YouTube, driving success on YouTube for brands and agencies. And we've got a couple great agency partners with us today. It's exciting that we have someone from the US and someone from the UK, because this topic is relevant for both, obviously, but there are some interesting similarities and differences that we're going to talk about today around CTV and YouTube specifically. So let's get to it. So really quickly, a look at what we're going to go through today. First, we're just going to talk about this explosive growth of TV viewership on YouTube, which Ryan alluded to. Then we're going to talk about what are people actually watching on TV screens on YouTube? Like, what is the content that they're watching? Then third, we're gonna talk about some best practices for advertisers. Again, we're gonna lean into some things that we've seen in the market, and then we'll have a Q&A, like Ryan said. So lots of good stuff to talk about. So we'll start with growth of TV viewership on YouTube. Really exciting thing happened just last month. Well, now actually 6 weeks ago, where in February, the CEO of YouTube said, for the first time ever, viewership on TV screens for YouTube surpassed viewership on mobile for the US. And this is a shift that we've been watching for years, where, you know, when I first started at Pixability 6 years ago, TV screens was a tiny, tiny percentage of the views on YouTube, and there was no way to target ads to TV screens. So it was very different. Now it's now surpassed mobile, so it's crazy. And this is part of the reason why we're seeing some of the things that Ryan mentioned. YouTube has the highest reach on TV screens in the US of any streaming platform, right? Which is crazy. It's been over a year now that Nielsen has shown this, higher than Netflix, higher than Hulu, higher than Disney Prime, et cetera. And you know, it's now up to the point where it's roughly 12% of viewership. So basically for every 100 minutes that people are watching TV in the US, 12 minutes of that is on YouTube, right? And what's even more exciting, I think, yeah, we just presented this at another event last week, is not only is YouTube bigger than these other platforms, but it's bigger than any media company in terms of its reach on YouTube in the US. Bigger than all of Disney. So, you know, that's ABC and ESPN and Hulu and all of the Disney properties, all of the NBC properties. So it's just a crazy reach that we're talking about now. And just to specify, and Aaron's going to actually talk a little bit about the differences between these two in a second, but when we're saying the reach of YouTube, we're actually talking about plain old YouTube, not YouTube TV, the subscription service. The subscription service is very successful, and we help clients with YouTube TV as well. But plain old YouTube, watching that on your TV screen, is what has all of this reach now. In fact, this has gone so far as you know, just last month, a lot of magazines, including Hollywood Reporter, reported this report from MoffettNathanson, a media firm, that said Pixability is officially the new king of media, like totally the king of media. It's going to surpass Disney in terms of revenue. YouTube itself, not Google. YouTube will surpass Disney in terms of revenue, and it's the new king of media. So we're here today to try to help. We're all in the same boat where we're all trying to figure out the best ways to use YouTube for brands, for their advertising. At Pixability, we also help folks with their organic strategies on YouTube, but today's focus on advertising. So again, I talked a little bit about YouTube TV versus YouTube and sort of where they fit in the CTV landscape. I'm going to kick it over to Erin because she'll talk a little bit about how her agency is thinking about the CTV landscape right now.
Thanks, Matt. Yes, it's definitely complex. And I think in order to figure out your CTV strategy, you have to understand the complexity of the landscape. So I tried to simplify it on this chart in terms of the many acronyms we have floating around and also where YouTube fits within that. So looking at subscription video on demand, SVOD, that's to the left. And that's going to be the publishers that you just saw in a lot of Matt's slides. It's really where a lot of that reach is with the big heavy players. So within that, we still have these two different types of subscriptions happening where we have ad-free viewership, where people typically pay a higher price to not have to worry about ads, or you have ad-supported subscription. And Hulu really led the charge in that, but then some other key players followed suit, such as Netflix and Prime Video. You also have the FAST, so moving over one column, that's the free ad-supported players. And again, it's ever-changing. Freevee is now actually underneath Prime Video technically, so a little bit less relevant, but Pluto, very popular. These are where people can just tune into these channels and watch the content without needing a subscription because the ad revenue is how they are making money. Similarly, we have the network streaming apps. So if somebody's watching the news on a streaming app, one of the broadcast stations, or if they're looking at, you know, Bachelor, ABC, those are other ways you can reach people on CTV, as well as the OEMs, so the original equipment manufacturers. And I also included the devices on this column, and that's going to be like your LG and Vizio TV, that could be your Roku or Amazon stick. And that's another way to reach these CTV viewers. And then finally, linear gets really interesting because it really blurs the line between broadcast and cable and CTV now, in the sense that you can actually stream over the internet broadcasting cable stations, and you start to get a mix again of those broadcast channels are still going to be traditionally broadcast commercials, but you're still reaching cord cutters. So it gets just really, really gray area and such a spectrum. But YouTube fitting in all this landscape, or simplified landscape, I should say, YouTube main, it should really be considered an SVOD. And then YouTube TV is one of those streaming linear platforms. And then with this mass adaptation of CTV, I mean, it's clear. We have the latest from MRI shows that 77% of the US population 18 plus is using streaming TV versus 59% using corded TV. And that's a 43% overlap. And we can see the absolute growth of connected TV throughout the years. But what we have to consider is, again, that ad-supported nature that I alluded to in that first graph. And that's where YouTube really becomes important. So even though we're seeing that a majority of the population is preferring streaming, you can't necessarily reach them as easily on ads as you can with corded TV or linear, I should say. So the latest survey marketer says that linear TV generates about 6 times as many ad impressions as CTV, and that's because a lot of those top publishers have those ad-free subscriptions. So looking at the second chart below, you can see estimated based on 2024 numbers, 21% of Netflix is that ad-supported viewer tier. So the majority is ad-free and harder to reach. 53% of Disney, Hulu, ESPN cluster. YouTube is at 80%, which is massive. And then Prime Video is at 80% as well. That said, Prime Video actually comes with your Amazon subscription, so a little bit less of an intentional subscription, which we'll see on the next slide. But one more point. Yep, perfect.
Oh, sorry.
And then, no, it's fine. I can go to the next one. And then of the ad-supported viewers, let's take a look at just CTV alone on YouTube. It's still the highest. So if you're looking at the ad-supported viewers in just CTV screens for YouTube, it's still reaching more than Prime Video ad-supported viewers. And then to my point earlier about that less intentional subscription of Prime Video, you see that in the average time spent by viewers. So Netflix has the highest time spent among these publishers, but of course, 21%, you're only reaching 21% of those ad-supported viewers, whereas YouTube is spending about 51 minutes and is primarily ad-supported versus Hulu and Prime Video showing less time spent. So I think this is a shift in mindset and something where you really need those studying media consumption trends and the data to have that handshake with the person that's creating the CTV strategy and buying to understand how important YouTube is in a CTV strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're very privileged to have someone from the US in Aaron and someone from the UK in Dave. And so just to kind of talk a little bit about what's happening in the UK, I was just there a few months ago, and a lot of similar patterns with YouTube, but also some very interesting differences in terms of how the UK approaches video advertising in general. I think we are seeing, as Dave will talk about, we are seeing a decline in traditional TV viewership, which leads to brands and agencies trying to figure out ways to get incremental reach. However, TV is still very important. Traditional TV is very important in the UK still, and there's very good programming still on traditional TV. So it's not it's not as steep of a curve as we've seen in the US of cord cutters. We are seeing this huge rise in CTV usage, though. And so as advertisers are trying to figure this out in the UK, they're figuring out where YouTube fits into this or doesn't fit into this. So Dave, I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit about what you all are seeing at Initiative.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. Linear or traditional TV in the UK is still really important for advertisers. It's got those big appointment of view programs, those entertainment formats and live sport, similar to what the packages see in the US. So still really well. But what is more and more doing is reaching those heavier TV viewers now. And so those lighter TV viewers, that they're moving away from linear as their first point of call. When they go home, they tend to just want to consume content as and when they want it. They don't want to wait for a traditional schedule to come up. So that's where the connected TV really plays an important role for them. And it's again something that advertisers buy into now. That those patterns are changing. So, and broadcasters, to compete with that, they're changing the way they distribute content as well. So CTV is becoming more and more important for broadcasters, and that's why the likes of ITV, BBC even have had a strong heritage in connected TV formats, and 20 plus years now they've been doing video on demand. So it's really important to their business model as well.
Yeah, and it's sort of wherever you look, whether it's US data like Aaron showed or UK data, there's some pretty startling data around YouTube's place in the the reach of users. This was just a chart that eMarketer came out with that showed of all the OTT viewers in the UK, YouTube basically reaches practically all of them. so the reach is there, whether you're doing TV advertising on YouTube or you're doing across all the different devices, right, in the UK. And Kantar did this study where a lot of UK folks would prefer to watch YouTube than other services. And so traditional advertisers are starting to realize that as much as they think of TV as a certain definition of things, that YouTube is a preferred video platform for consumers in the UK. There are challenges, however, and this study by Teeds came out that eMarketer published around some of the perceived challenges of CTV by advertisers in the UK. And one of the big perceived challenges, and the number one perceived challenge, is cost of CTV advertising compared to TV advertising. And so one of the things that we wanted to point out here is the good news is while CTV advertising can have some high CPMs in the UK, YouTube, both in the UK and the US, can have very effective ways to reach people on TV screens. We're going to talk about this third thing, the quality of programming concern, later in the webinar here. But Dave, just talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of getting brands to think of YouTube as a part of the CTV puzzle, or just think of them as getting them to think of CTV in general and move away from traditional TV.
It was a big education piece that we did a few years ago. So a lot of brands are wedded to linear TV because they see that historic results, and that traditional media has always driven that. But we did a lot of work showcasing the value of CTV in general, that great content is out there. And then those viewing patterns are even more pronounced for young audiences, so 16 to 34, 16 to 44s, where the price really escalates on linear TV to reach those now. So it was all about showcasing that value, and especially on YouTube, and where we can align that sort of that less expensive cost per reach point, that we can build that and layer onto linear as that sort of reach curve plateaus. And also showcasing that great content's out there as well. Sometimes it's maybe harder to find, but it's there. And that's sort of how we brought that model together, and a lot of our clients are bought into that now. And so some of them moved away from being 80% linear into like a 50-50 split of linear and CTV, which YouTube plays a big part of that.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Again, like I said, when I was over there, there's some great studies over there about still the power of TV, as you said. But the fact of the matter is, to get the reach that advertisers need, you have to have CTV as a part of that, YouTube as a part of that. All right, so we talked a little bit about the big booming growth of YouTube on TV screens, but this is a question we get all the time, and I know Aaron and Dave get. Well, but what are people watching? Like, I get it that there's reach there, but I don't want them watching garbage and reach them on a TV screen if they're watching cat videos or something like that. So what is it that they're watching? Well, we have a big insights team here at Pixability, and they've been taking a look at this over time. And interestingly, not super surprisingly, but interestingly, people tend to be watching, and this is across both, this is global, they tend to be watching longer content on TV screens. 58% of the content that they watch on TV screens is 10+ minute videos. So we're not talking about little quick, 30-second, 1-minute videos. 83% of the videos they're watching are 3 minutes plus. So it's mostly longer content. And I know that applies to me. Like, when I'm going to watch a video that's 10 minutes, I better be somewhere situated, on a couch or something. If I'm going to use my mobile phone, I'd much rather watch it on a TV screen. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail of what this looks like. Here's a great example our insights team pulled. They pulled examples of specific videos that way over index for viewership on TV screens. And this, 27-minute video from Mr. Beast is a great example. People are 11 times more likely to watch this on a TV screen than their phone. And again, it gets back to what I said. Are you going to watch 27 minutes of content on your mobile phone? Maybe. People do it, but much more preferable to watch it on your TV screen. And I know people use Mr. Beast as an example all the time, but it is kind of fun to also point out that Mr. Beast has more subscribers than Netflix and Hulu combined. So again, thinking about the entire reach of YouTube, that just one creator has more reach than all of Netflix and Hulu is pretty insane. Mr. Beast had a really fun little thing around the Super Bowl a few years ago where there was the cost of Super Bowl ads, and he posted something, I think it was on LinkedIn or something, saying, you know, you guys are crazy to pay this much. You can get twice the reach for me for like half the price or something like that. So again, it's just a good way to remind people that there's crazy reach on YouTube. But it's not all just Mr. Beasts that people are watching, right? Sport is a really key type of content that people watch on their TV screens. I had the pleasure of watching the CMO of the Kansas City Chiefs present at an event a few summers ago, where she said, listen, we were going to do a TV show on our team called The Franchise, and we could have gone to Netflix or Hulu or Prime or Max or anyone, and they would have bought this thing. But we really wanted to do it on YouTube. We decided to do it on YouTube ourselves. We could have gotten paid from Netflix, but we did it ourselves on YouTube, and we're generating ad revenue for ourselves there. So that's a big shift. Now, if I'm going to watch that 27-minute show, I'm probably going to watch it on my TV screen. So we're seeing a lot of viewership of that. The same is true for highlights, and highlights have become, like, really premium highlights have become a big piece of viewership, not just on TV screens, but across all devices. And I know this is a big piece of viewership. Sport in general in the UK is important for premium viewership. Dave, so talk a little bit about, you know, how advertisers are approaching sport as a key piece of their video programs.
Yeah, I mean, again, sport is one of those appointment to view marquee programs in a schedule of the TV at the weekend. Premier League football, soccer in the UK is huge, but it's behind a paywall on Sky predominantly. So the games on the weekend, they're only available to 10 million homes in the UK at most. So people can't see those goals until they watch shows later on in free to air. But what Sky realised that was a really good, important point for them to hold their consumer base and their paid for subscribers, but also a really good way to engage with viewers who might not have that subscription and get them to stay within their sort of garden, basically. So a couple of years ago, they started showcasing those Premier League highlights on YouTube. So like 3-minute clips, and they'd come out like 20 minutes after the final whistle. So people will just go straight onto YouTube and just consume that content, and it's growing really well for them. So much they've built basically a whole business around it, which they call short form Sky. And again, and from that they've been able to build out their F1 offering on the channel as well. So and it's just enticed people to come into Sky from that. So it keeps people within the Sky ecosystem, and then people subscribe to Sky on the back of it. So it's been really important for their business, and to get to advertising that short form content with like a 20-second pre-roll is so much more cost effective than buying into the live spot on the traditional broadcast schedule. You're looking at £100,000 to buy in a Manchester United versus Liverpool game on a Sunday afternoon, whereas you're talking tens of £1,000s to buy across the whole of the highlights package on a weekend for Sky. So it's been really good and really good for advertisers to buy into it. And again, it adds that incremental reach because it's viewers you won't be picking up on your linear TV schedule otherwise, but you're doing a much more cost-effective rate.
Yeah, I love it. And again, you can see just for this Liverpool clip, over 1.5 million views. So the reach is there. We all watch highlights. Anyone that cares about sports watches highlights on YouTube. Here are some of the other categories of content that our insights team saw over-indexed for TV screens: home and garden content, travel content, news content. There are others as well. I pulled up this example of Architectural Digest. This is one of the things that I love watching on TV screens. For any White Lotus fans out there, there's a great one that came out with Walton Goggins from White Lotus. His home in the Hudson Valley in New York is kind of my favorite dream home in the world. But sitting back and watching that, you know, even if it's a 5 to 10 minute video, in this case 12 minutes for Sienna Miller, is a great experience, a TV experience that's very premium that advertisers should be a part of, right? Back to what Dave was saying about how people watch sport now. You know, you can watch it live, or you can watch highlights, or you can do both. Similar with TV shows, both in the US and in the UK and everywhere. This is an example that we give of, you know, Britain's Got Talent, where a decade ago, the only way to watch it would be live, or, you know, when it's played on your TV screen, right? Then DVRs came along, both in the UK and US, and people would DVR it, maybe watch it the next day, and they didn't need to be there for the time slot that it was playing. Then years later, it would play on ITVX, and you could stream it anytime you wanted, right? Similar to DVR, but you could just kind of pull it up. Now, again, the amount of times people watch these kinds of shows in terms of just the highlights rather than watching the whole show is astronomical. We see the same pattern for shows like Saturday Night Live here in the US, where very few people watch it live on a Saturday night anymore. They wait till the best parts of it are put on YouTube the next day. But yeah, Dave, speak a little bit to this, consumption difference that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example. When I was buying TV 10, 15 years ago, this show would be doing 10, 12 million people on a Saturday night. It's huge numbers in the UK, and you're looking half to a third of that viewing that on a Saturday night now, because again, people want to consume content around their schedule as much as anything else. So some of that audience now is migrated to ITVX and the VOD, but again, ITV and the other broadcasts like Channel 4 have realised that the way people consume has changed, and a big part of what people are watching is short clips and even longer form content on YouTube. So all the major broadcasters now have a YouTube offering. The content does really well on there, and Britain's Got Talent is just another great example of people watching those shorter clips on there. But again, Love Island's a really good example, another entertainment format that's only 50% of its total audience is on the nightly show at 9 p.m. Everyone else is consuming on the other formats, and short clips on YouTube again are really important because it's on for like a 4 or 6 week stretch. It's on every night of the week, so people have got to catch up before they talk to their mates the next day. So again, it's really important.
That's a good example, the Love Island one. Great. So just to backtrack, we talked about the growth of YouTube on TV screens, and then we've talked a little bit about what people are actually watching on those TV screens. So what does this mean for advertisers? And again, Aaron and Dave and I obviously work with brands every day that are trying to figure out YouTube. There's a lot to figure out on YouTube right now, and TV screen advertising is just one piece of the puzzle that they're trying to figure out. So what do we see from an advertiser standpoint? How should you approach this? And one of the big challenges for an advertiser is just the volume of content on YouTube in general, where, you guys have seen these numbers before, but 500 hours of video uploaded every minute, which really translates, doing fuzzy math, to about the equivalent of a Netflix worth of content every hour. So basically 24 Netflixes are created every day by YouTube. So as an advertiser, that's overwhelming, right? And that there's a big chunk of it that you wouldn't want to be on. So how do you find just that slice of it that's great? And so what we're seeing as the hugely important trend now is using AI to help curate content from YouTube. If you want to find just the right content that you want to include in your campaigns, while also finding content you want to exclude from your campaigns. In the old days, again, Dave mentioned the old days of TV buying, where you could pick a half dozen TV shows you wanted to advertise on, and maybe a half dozen magazines you wanted to advertise with. Now you're not going to pick, hundreds of thousands of channels that a typical campaign runs on YouTube. You're not going to hand select that. And so using Gen AI is really the key to it. And we have our great product team here has built a way to curate content. We have more YouTube contextual data than anyone else, and we use that and then use Gen AI to curate content. And this is something that I believe will be applied to all video advertising someday, if only the platforms would be a little bit friendlier with each other and break down their walls. Imagine being able to do a plan where you could curate content from Hulu and YouTube and BBC all in one plan using Gen AI. That's kind of the dream, right? So that's one challenge, is curating. What we're getting from a lot of advertisers, and we talk a lot to Dave's company about this, is but if an advertiser specifically wants to make the transition to YouTube with content that really feels like TV content, is there a way to do that? And there's a lot of it. There's plenty of TV like content, as we've already shown. And so we have a solution called PixTV where we can take just TV quality inventory for you if that's what you want. We always argue that quality is in the eye of the beholder, though, too. So I might find a creator who's really important to me as quality, but if you want just what sort of the traditional perception is of TV quality, we can do that as well. But here's another challenge that we're seeing, and Aaron and Dave are going to talk to this. YouTube can be so many things now, right? It's been a tradition. It's been the number one video platform for as long as we can all remember globally. It's now a huge CTV platform, as we've talked about ad nauseum. It's now also a huge shorts platform. A lot of folks are running it side by side with TikTok or even instead of TikTok now. So as an agency, how do you run YouTube campaigns? Often these teams are separate. So how do you run YouTube campaigns where you might have one team wanting to run shorts, another team running CTV, another team running traditional video, and you don't want them to duplicate efforts for the same client. So I'm going to ask Aaron to start, like, how are you guys approaching, YouTube in general, but also the TV screen challenge for it?
Absolutely. I think it's evolved with how YouTube has evolved. So the way we think about it typically is what it means to the user. And I feel like if you have that mentality, you can kind of navigate the whole thing. So when we were looking at online video, it really fell in the programmatic team. Now that it's, very prominent in CTV, it's been incorporated in our CTV strategy. That still typically goes through our programmatic team. But now with YouTube Shorts, that really goes through our social team. So all these people need to chat because at the end of the day, this could all be in one campaign. And whoever's taking lead is really whichever channel we're prioritizing for. More and more so probably in the programmatic space, but we don't want to, cut any corners when it comes to YouTube Shorts because it is very much similar to the TikTok and Reels.
Absolutely, and I should have mentioned that this data is from a study that we do every year of agencies, and we do a version in the U.S. and a version in the U.K. So here's the U.K. version, which again is very similar in pattern to the challenges in the U.S. of YouTube can be many different things, and one of the things we're seeing is in the early days of YouTube. YouTube is often not part of the CTV planning at all. We're seeing it kind of creep its way into CTV planning. What these numbers show, the light green circles, are the percentage of agencies in our study that are running campaigns with CTV, TV, and YouTube all from one team. And you can see that it's less than a third of agencies are doing this right now. But what you can see is, closer to half of agencies are planning to do it in the future. So agencies are starting to think of YouTube and CTV and TV as all one, video strategy that should be planned together. And they're moving in that direction. And I know, Dave, you guys have pioneered a lot of efforts in this. So I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit about the 1AV stuff.
Yeah, cool. So thanks. One of these strategies that we employ to plan all sort of premium video, it essentially boils down to maximizing reach as cost effectively as possible with a client's budget. What we make sure is that within that, as we plan to place that glossy brand advert that clients got around the best quality possible, but obviously that can be very subjective. So to objectify it, but basically we follow these sort of the Barb fit for TV principles, which there's three pillars to that, but basically and essentially they boil down to the content you appear around on any channel wouldn't look out of place if it was on a traditional broadcast BBC or ITV schedule. If you could see that going out at 8 o'clock at night or during midday or something like that. So that's how we try and place our content, and YouTube does that in so many good ways now, so many different effective ways you can do that. So it's becoming a bigger piece of how we plan. So we plan it holistically. It's unique to every brand, every audience. There's no one size fits all. It's basically every brief that comes in is judged on its own merits, and we plan accordingly. Especially that we'll see varying spend splits across channels based on which whether younger or older, more upmarket, essentially, and what those KPIs are as well. So it's generally how we plan it. And again, it's something again that clients have really bought into in the last couple of years and embraced it. We've had a lot more clients like the bigger brands transition out of linear TV as their go-to vehicle and move them towards maybe even planning with CTV first as an option. Yeah,
absolutely. And in terms of what works and what doesn't work on TV screens on YouTube, we have a lot of data around this. Generally speaking, you shouldn't run TV screen advertising if clicks are the main KPI for the brand. But completed views and awareness are both great things. I know for that TV screens can generate. I know, Aaron, you guys have seen the same, that awareness lift has been a big part of what you've seen.
Yeah, we've done a lot of incrementality studies, and you do see that even if you're not getting obviously clicks in the moment, it may not be a clickable piece of content on your TV screen. And this is across CTV, not just specific to YouTube. People are still coming to your site afterwards. And that incrementality rate of those exposed versus not exposed is higher on CTV than a display ad or a native ad or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that makes sense to people. I mean, you know, a lot of non-skippable ads on YouTube, on TV screens as well. So I'll just give a couple examples, and then we'll open it up to questions. But what we're seeing, really good best practices for people on YouTube TV screens is using all of the capabilities of YouTube in one campaign. So we work with this great agency out of California, Ignited, and they ran this awesome Chicken of the Sea campaign last year, where it was Jessica Simpson and her daughter replaying this funny thing that Jessica had said a decade ago. And they had shorts creative that was sort of, you know, kind of the social portion of their campaign. And then they had a TV portion of their campaign that was trying to get TV viewers, and it was ultra successful. So this is one best practice we're seeing is, if you want to use YouTube for CTV, it doesn't have to be a strictly CTV campaign. You can have a CTV portion of an existing campaign. And this is the kind of thing we're doing for a lot of brands like Chicken of the Sea. Kind is another example that has always been really good at thinking of YouTube as a CTV platform. In a recent campaign when we worked with them, they wanted us to employ all kinds of tactics like day parting to prime time to try to get and to target TV screens to get the type of viewer that they want and the type of lean back viewership they want. So both of these brands, these are just two examples, but the lesson here is if you're an agency or a brand where you're able to include YouTube in CTV campaigns, you absolutely should. If you don't have that set up yet, you should still be thinking of your YouTube campaigns as you can break them apart into CTV portions and shorts portions and traditional horizontal, you know, digital video portions. And there's a lot of things you can do to maximize what your KPIs are, et cetera. So lots of good stuff there. Great. Well, as Ryan said, we'd love to open it up to questions. If you need to reach out to me or Aaron or Dave, feel free to email me at my email address here. And I know Ryan and team's going to share this deck with folks. We'll get to some questions. We may not get to all of them, so we're also happy to answer them as a follow-up. So Ryan, yeah, let's start some questions.
Yeah, Matt, thank you to Dave, to Aaron for all these awesome insights. And thank you to all the people who have tuned in. We got a lot of questions. Like Matt said, we send these questions to Matt and team here. If we can't get to your question, they can follow up with you directly via email. Matt, let's go ahead and start with our first question, which is very tactical. When running CTV campaigns on YouTube, what targeting options are available?
Yeah, so this is one of the other cool things about YouTube on TV screens is you get all the kind of benefits of the targeting that you get with YouTube in general, which includes things that you get because YouTube's part of Google, right? Like search targeting, right? Imagine being a car company and or Jeep, you know, and someone's just searched for Jeep or cars, you know, new cars on Google. You can target an ad for them on a TV screen. So imagine being Jeep, running an ad on a TV screen in someone's living room to someone that recently searched for, you know, Jeep or cars similar to Jeep. And then there's tons of, as anyone that's familiar with YouTube targeting, there's tons of ways to target behaviorally. Whether we like it or not, Google has a lot of information about us. There's a lot of ways to target us based on our past web history, based on our, you know, we're signed into Google. When we're signed into Google, they know a lot about our age and gender and marital status and so forth. So there's great targeting options there.
That's great. Aaron, I think this question could be suitable for you, covering off on that mix of social diversity in your buy when we think about the things that are happening with TikTok right now and agencies transitioning their assets that were intended for TikTok to YouTube. Can we talk about the strategy there and the benefits? Is it similar environments? Are more people trying that as a part of their larger marketing strategy?
Yes, super relevant right now as we're now on the second extension of what could be the TikTok ban. I think that it was, YouTube Shorts came out. I believe it's been definitely over a year now, where you could select specifically YouTube Shorts for targeting. And they're so similar to Reels and TikTok. So you can repurpose content from those platforms onto YouTube Shorts. Super easy. You would list it just like you would any other video on YouTube to then use in your ads. And I think it's a great time to test it. I think it's trending upwards in terms of media consumption. And we're seeing a lot of success, especially in reach. So in terms of reaching more than just, TikTok skews younger. It's definitely opened up, but it definitely over indexes and millennials and Gen Z, versus YouTube has a broader reach, and people are finding themselves on these YouTube Shorts coming from the YouTube app on their phone and things like that. So you're getting a broader reach. As Matt said earlier, it's great. It's great for views. It's a little bit less of a click driver at the moment right now. But I think in terms of views and reach, it's working really well. And I'm sure it's going to continue to perform as more people move over to that platform.
That contextual element of your goals are the most important part of choosing that strategy is crucial to this. And you may not get the same thing, but you're going to get a lot of value out of the YouTube Shorts as well.
Absolutely.
I think, Matt, this is probably a question for you around quality of content. I feel like you touched on this a little bit, but over the past 5 years, how has the quality of content on YouTube? There's so much. Has it gotten better by volume or stayed around the same? What's your perspective there?
Yeah, and I see another question in the queue that's also very similar, asking about brand safety on YouTube. Yeah. So in general, the quality of the content on YouTube has stayed the same, but the ability to kind of stay away from scary stuff has improved a little bit. YouTube has done a much better job of getting rid of unsafe content on YouTube, which means just like flat out, no one should advertise on it. There was a big scare years ago about terrorism content or, violence, sexual content, et cetera. The really, really bad, unsafe content it's a lot fewer and far between as it was years ago. That said, it's there, but it's less likely that you're going to see it and an ad on it. The content that's unsuitable for advertisers is still a big challenge, and I know Dave and Aaron know this. When you're a brand, in that same study we showed, agencies tell us that about a third of the content they run on YouTube is not suitable for their advertisers. So the difference between suitability and safety is suitability is on McDonald's, I might not want to run on vegan content or on content that's negative about McDonald's. Or I'm an alcohol brand, I don't want to run on made for kids content. So while the content has gotten, there's less examples of really scary content on there, you do need help. And that's one of the things we do. You do need help in finding suitable content. So
that's great. Dave and Aaron, I think this is an interesting question for you all working with your clients so closely. When you think about the adoption of buying on YouTube, what are some of the biggest barriers that advertisers are having to overcome as they think about incremental reach on TV and CTV campaigns?
Well, I think perception, again, that brand suitability and safety has always been a barrier, I think, but that's less of an issue now with the content and how we curate that content and how we source that content is really important. And the other one that's always going to come up in these calls, and I'm surprised we got this far, is measurement. It's how do you measure that incrementality and prove that it's added value to a campaign that you wouldn't necessarily got on just running more linear or another CTV partner. But in the UK especially, there's lots of great work going on. One specifically is Project Origin. People aren't aware, that's a cross-media measurement platform that's funded by advertisers and Google are very heavily invested in, as always, as you're very strong supporters of it. So we've got clients in the building that use it, and it measures linear TV and then Google and YouTube advertising on top of that. We can see what the uplift we're getting from running those specific formats on the channel. So that's been really important for us.
Yeah, I would agree. I think incremental reach is always tricky to measure. You do need to take some measurement plans into consideration, but I think also just like the upfront data and making sure that the people that are hands-on platform or doing the buys and everything understand where it fits into the larger consumption pie, so you know how much to be allocating how much of your target audience is actually watching in this format on these platforms. I think that helps, because sometimes, you know, those people aren't necessarily communicating with each other, and that goes back to the fragmentation of not just the media, but also the teams that are running the media.
Well, let's have this be our last question. There's still plenty more here to digest. So, like I said, we'll send these over to Matt and team, and they can respond to some of these directly. Apologies if we couldn't get to your question, but let's talk about the creative strategy. Should advertisers change their ad creative when running on YouTube versus TV or a streaming service like Hulu? I think that could be for anybody here.
Yeah, I can start, but I'd love to hear if Aaron and Dave have seen. There are lots of different opinions on this. I mean, in general, when advertising on YouTube or any digital platform, you can't use the old way of TV advertising where you kind of build a story and then at the end of the ad you reveal the brand and kind of the climax of the story. You got to get to it right away, right? You got to get the brand introduced right away. You got to get the gist of the ad introduced right away. People's attention spans are short. And so I always tell people, whether they're advertising on TV or on YouTube, they shouldn't be using that old format of TV advertising. So if you've got that old format of advertising, it's not going to work well on YouTube for sure. I don't know, Aaron and Dave, whether you have kind of tips you guys give people, but.
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry, go on, Aaron, you go first.
You go.
Okay, cool. Again, it's like I said, you can't use the old ways, and you've got to all optimize for the format you've got. It's the same as if, you know, it's not right to run a 10-second creative on a cinema screen, because you're not going to get that impact. It's not what it's made for. So it's about optimizing that format, being in the right places. But again, with, you know, even in the UK now, 45% of YouTube viewing is on the big screen. So people are now spending more time watching that content. So you've got the opportunity there to put a longer form, non-skippable, more brand ad that's kind of come from your TVC rather than from your social platform, anything on that platform now, because you know people are going to engage with it, and they're leaning into that experience, that they're sitting there to engage with that long form content. So you can be brave and put out a longer form content, but again, you've got to optimize correctly for every format you're using.
Yeah, and I would just say that it's like, from the consumer's perspective, it's more about, okay, I'm watching TV on the bigger screen. What do I want to see? I'm watching shorts on my mobile. What do I want to see? Those ads are going to look different. Obviously, Matt talked about skippable. You got to get in front of them right away to even have that skippable impression count towards your brand. If they don't recognize your brand, it's a wasted impression. So I do think you can, if like ideal practice, I would say, is like the more you tailor per channel or per the way the consumer is viewing that content, the better. But also, like, you know, it's becoming more of a gray area. I think I see some vertical videos now on TV commercials because it's a way to like stand out from the noise. So, you know, you can break the rules, but I think in terms of just tailoring per the consumer's content experience is best.
Well, thank you all. This is all the time we have for questions. Matt, you got a lot of homework with the question list here. There's some good ones in here that you know, would be really valuable to answer directly. But I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Thanks to Pixability for making this conversation possible in the first place. It was incredibly educational. And so a couple of reminders. Make sure you check out your email for a link to the on-demand recording later today. You can share that with your colleagues. You can also download the resources from that email as well. If you enjoyed today's webinar, be sure to check out other AdWeek webinars at adweek.com/webinars. Again, big thank you to our speakers. A thank you to our audience for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing everyone at an upcoming AdWeek webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.